Leonardo da Vinci was a man of many talents. He is best known for his paintings, the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. However, his art wasn't his only contribution to the world. He was a celebrated artist, but also an inventor, an engineer, and was disciplined in many of the sciences. Born in the small town of Vinci, Leonardo was born as the illegitimate son of Ser Piero, a rich government worker in the nearby city of Florence. His father would spend his time in Florence while Leonardo grew up in Vinci. Leonardo's education didn't take place in a formal environment as he didn't read Greek or Latin, which were the common languages of schoolbooks. He received an education taught by his uncle and a local priest, but this might have worked to his advantage. His homeschool education granted him the opportunity to write with his left hand, which wasn't allowed in schools at the time. The constant use of his left hand would have helped him develop stronger connections between the left and right hemispheres of the brain, which in theory would give him a more creative thinking mind. This reminded me of the TED Talk by Sir Ken Robinson. Do schools kill creativity? In this TED Talk, Sir Ken Robinson talks about the school system's attack on creativity. Students are being punished for being wrong, and they're going to make fewer mistakes in the future. But they are also less likely to think creatively and outside of the box. Leonardo's creativity might have flourished in an environment where it was okay to be wrong, and it was okay to see things differently. He was also able to study art at a young age, whereas in schools it was stigmatized, and Leonardo might have been steered away from his lifelong passion. At the age of 14, Leonardo would get a job as an apprentice. He was going to work as an artist under a man named Vassario. Once Leonardo finished his apprenticeship, he was on his own. Leonardo's siblings left him out of his inheritance of their father. Due to his poor financial state, Leonardo had to frequently move around Italy. Throughout his life, Leonardo would work in a very sporadic fashion. While painting one of his masterpieces, The Last Supper, he would work on it relentlessly on the painting for days, only to follow it up with days of not making a single mark on it. He would also get distracted from the painting by his other interests in science and inventing. One of Leonardo's other passions was anatomy and researching the human form. He decided to try to get work studying the human body, and eventually Leonardo was granted permission to dissect human corpses at a hospital in Florence. The creative process assignment asked us to look inward and describe our own creativity process. When coming up into this course, I didn't think I had a creative process, as I didn't make any art or write stories. I have realized now that the creative process is always ongoing and happens daily. Ideas don't happen without creativity and thought. I also thought that being creative was always an uphill battle, and if you stopped working, you would stop being creative. Leonardo da Vinci shows us that this couldn't be further from the truth. He was one of the greatest artists in history, and his contributions to culture go much deeper than just art. Even this artist was known to get distracted by his other ideas and desires. When Leonardo da Vinci started working at the hospital, he had no prior experience with human dissection. He worked late nights dissecting bodies, and since this was before preservation methods existed for corpses, he would have to work quickly. He drew the parts of the bodies that he dissected. Bones, muscles, arteries, and nerves were all shown in detail, which was unprecedented for the time. His drawings were so revolutionary that they permanently changed the way that medical drawings are shown in textbooks. Leonardo gained value from his knowledge of human anatomy, which he used for years to come in the visuals of his own art. While the medical field may have helped Leonardo become a better artist, it also allowed him to imagine what each function of the body does. Leonardo discovered the shape and size of ventricles in the brain, which is where the spinal fluid is stored. He injected hot wax into the brains of these corpses he was dissecting, and then he would dissect away the brain. That would leave only left the wax molds of the ventricles in the brain left to study. He was the first person to ever record the pathing and placement of ventricles in the brain, and he was also credited with the role of discovering the heart being built with 4 valves rather than 2, and he also discovered that the spine plays a role in movement and touch. This reminded me of the Tales of Creativity in Play TED Talk by Tim Brown. While it is a little dark to consider injecting wax into human brains as play, it is similar in theme to the topic of the TED Talk. In the TED, Tim Brown has the audience members draw each other in 60 seconds and show it to the person they drew. The audience members were embarrassed to show their subpar work to their peers, and Tim Brown says this was the same way for wild ideas. While most people dissecting corpses would think it's crazy or gross to inject wax into people's brains, Leonardo didn't consider their thoughts on the matter and just did it. He felt free to try out crazy and wild ideas regardless of the opinions of others. Leonardo da Vinci passed away at the age of 67, which was quite old for the time, and he was actively working on projects until his death. The life of Leonardo da Vinci reminds me the most of the Torn Story assignment. We got random cards with random words on them, and we were free to make our own story out of someone else's. This is sort of like the way our lives unfold. We are each given a set of cards, and we are free to make whatever story we want with them. Leonardo, in theory, wasn't given the best set of cards. He grew up in a single-parent, lower-class household, but he didn't complain about the cards he was given. He just went out into the world and lived life on his own terms.